On the morning of August 15, 1893, a frantic telegram was received by the Newport Police Department, sparking one of the Gilded Age's most disturbing unsolved mysteries. From her family's oceanfront mansion during the most exclusive social event of the Newport season, 23-year-old Evangeline Cunningham, heir to a railroad fortune worth over $40 million, had vanished without a trace. The circumstances alone weren't what made her disappearance so chilling. It was what investigators discovered hidden in her private chambers. Photographs of 13 prominent Newport families, each marked with cryptic symbols, were found, along with a leather-bound journal containing names, dates, and dollar amounts. This journal would implicate some of America's most powerful industrialists in a decades-long web of blackmail and murder. Most disturbing of all was a collection of forged death certificates, each bearing the signatures of 3 different coroners. These documents recorded deaths officially ruled accidental but showing identical symptoms of arsenic poisoning. For over a century, the Cunningham family used their influence to keep these discoveries buried, maintaining that Evangeline died in a tragic accident abroad. Federal investigators who tried to examine the evidence found their access mysteriously blocked by court orders signed by judges with financial ties to the very railroad interests Evangeline had been investigating. Local newspaper editors who initially showed interest in the story suddenly reversed course after visits from well-dressed men. These men spoke quietly about unfortunate consequences for those who spread malicious rumors about respected citizens. But a far more sinister picture of that August night in 1893 is painted by recently discovered court documents and witness testimonies. Revealed in a cache of letters found in the walls of a demolished Providence mansion is that Evangeline had been working with a network of private investigators, foreign journalists, and even federal agents. They were secretly documenting what they termed the American Conspiracy, a systematic campaign of murder and corruption reaching into the highest levels of government and business. Before we continue with the story of Evangeline Cunningham and the dark secrets that may have cost her life, make sure to subscribe to our channel. Let us know in the comments what state or city you're listening from. We love hearing from our community of mystery lovers who help us uncover these buried truths. Tonight, we'll reveal evidence suggesting Evangeline's disappearance was not an isolated incident. It was part of a pattern of eliminations that claimed the lives of at least 37 people who threatened to expose what contemporary documents called the Newport Compact. This was a secret alliance of America's wealthiest families who had divided the nation's resources among themselves and were prepared to kill anyone who challenged their control. In the summer of 1893, Newport was the undisputed crown jewel of American high society. But a web of secrets, rivalries, and barely contained violence lay beneath its glittering surface, a truth that would have shocked the American public. From a modest colonial settlement, the coastal Rhode Island town had transformed into what newspapers called America's Monte Carlo, a playground where railroad barons, steel magnates, and shipping dynasties competed in displays of unprecedented wealth. A procession of marble palaces masquerading as summer cottages had become the famous Bellevue Avenue, each more extravagant than the last. Dozens of immigrant workers had lost their lives in their construction, deaths that were rarely recorded or investigated. This transformation of Newport into a gilded paradise had been carefully orchestrated by a small group of families. They recognized that concentrated wealth required not just business acumen but also sophisticated methods of social control. From the labor unrest and political challenges of the 1870s and 1880s, they had learned that public opinion could be dangerous to their interests. Their solution was Newport, a closed community where they could plan business strategies, arrange marriages between their children, and coordinate responses to threats without outside interference. A position of particular prominence in this rarefied world was occupied by the Cunningham family. Through the Baltimore and Newport Railroad, Harrison Cunningham had built his empire, a network essential to the movement of coal, steel, and manufactured goods across the Northeast. By 1893, his wealth was estimated at over $40 million, equivalent to more than $1 billion in today's money. But only his acknowledged assets were represented by this figure. Private banking records, not discovered until the 1970s, revealed that Cunningham controlled shadow companies worth at least another $20 million. These included mining operations in Colorado, timber companies in the Pacific Northwest, and shipping firms operating under foreign flags to avoid American labor laws. Majestically on a 12-acre bluff overlooking the Atlantic sat the family's Newport estate, Windward Hall, its 68 rooms filled with treasures collected from across Europe. But features that few guests ever saw were also contained in the mansion: a private telegraph office connected directly to railroad dispatch centers, a document vault with walls thick enough to withstand dynamite, and a network of underground tunnels connecting to similar facilities at neighboring estates. The reality that Newport's social season was as much about coordinating business conspiracies as it was about entertainment was reflected in these features. But while simultaneously representing its greatest internal threat, it was Harrison's daughter, Evangeline, who truly captivated Newport society. Described by contemporaries as possessing an ethereal, almost otherworldly beauty, she had returned from 3 years of European finishing schools with an education far exceeding what was considered proper for young women of her station. For languages were spoken fluently by her, she had studied philosophy and literature at the Sorbonne, and she possessed what her governess diplomatically termed an uncomfortably inquisitive mind. More troublingly for her family's interests, she had also received instruction in accounting, business law, and investigative techniques from professors with no idea they were educating someone who would use these skills to threaten the entire structure of American corporate power. By 23, Evangeline had already rejected marriage proposals from 2 European counts and the son of a Pennsylvania steel magnate, much to her parents' growing frustration. But her rejections were not based on romantic preference. They stemmed from her discovery that each suitor had been selected specifically because their families were complicit in the same network of corruption her father's business empire depended upon. Through careful investigation, she had learned the European counts represented banking interests that laundered profits from American industrial accidents, while the steel magnate's son was personally responsible for the deaths of over 40 workers in a series of preventable mine collapses. Particularly tense for the Cunningham family, and indeed for all of Newport's elite families, had been the summer of 1893. Harrison's health was failing, though few realized his symptoms matched those of other business leaders who had begun to question the methods of the Newport Compact. Among business partners and competitors alike, questions about the railroad succession had begun to surface, particularly because several recent accidents had eliminated potential challenges to Cunningham's control of key transportation routes. As the only heir, Evangeline would inherit everything, but only if she married before her 25th birthday, according to the terms of her grandfather's will. A sense of urgency that pervaded every social gathering that season had been created by this legal stipulation, but it had also provided Evangeline with a powerful bargaining position. She had quietly let it be known that her cooperation with the marriage requirement might depend upon receiving satisfactory answers to certain questions about the family business operations. Another layer of complexity to Newport's already intricate social dynamics was added by the broader context of 1893. The nation was gripping with the panic of 1893, a severe economic depression that had begun that spring with the failure of the Philadelphia and Reading Railroad Company, triggering a cascade of bank failures and business bankruptcies. While largely insulated from the financial crisis appeared the wealthy residents of Newport, many fortunes were quietly crumbling. Several prominent families had been forced to sell their mansions or retreat to smaller quarters, though they maintained their public facades of prosperity. What the general public did not know was that the Panic of 1893 had been deliberately engineered by the Newport Compact as a method of consolidating their control over American industry. By manipulating credit markets and triggering strategic bankruptcies, they had been able to acquire competitors' assets at a fraction of their true value, while their own wealth remained protected through foreign bank accounts and shell companies. In this atmosphere of artificial crisis and hidden desperation, an almost mythical quality among Newport's social circles had been taken on by Evangeline Cunningham's massive inheritance. The psychological atmosphere of Newport in 1893 was further complicated by the presence of numerous European visitors who had come not merely for social reasons, but as representatives of banking and industrial interests seeking to establish footholds in the American economy. The level of violence and intimidation they discovered among America's business elite surprised many of these visitors. Count Friedrich von Stephan, a German banker who attended several Newport social events that summer, wrote in his private diary, "The Americans speak of business competition, but what I observe here is more akin to medieval warfare conducted with modern weapons. These people have organized themselves into feudal domains, each protecting its territory through methods that would shock even the most ruthless European industrialists. Particularly astute were the Count's observations because he had witnessed several incidents that other guests either missed or chose to ignore. During a garden party at the Peaton estate, he had observed Theodore Peaton in a heated discussion with a man who appeared to be a federal government official. The conversation ended with Pemberton handing the official a leather briefcase, after which the official departed immediately without participating in the social festivities. When von Stephan discreetly inquired, he was told such exchanges were routine business matters. The evening of August 14, 1893, began like countless others in Newport's social calendar, but contemporary accounts suggest many participants were aware they were attending what might be the final act of a drama building for months. Their annual summer's end ball was being hosted by the Cunninghams, a tradition that had become one of the most coveted invitations of the season, but also a gathering that served multiple purposes beyond social entertainment. Over 300 guests had been invited to Windward Hall, representing not only the cream of American and European society, but also a carefully selected group of politicians, judges, journalists, and business leaders whose cooperation was essential to maintaining the Newport Compact's control over American commerce. With electric lights, still a novelty in 1893, the mansion blazed, a display of technological sophistication few private residences could match. Not merely for illumination had the electric system been installed, but also to power a private telephone exchange that allowed the Cunningham family to maintain instant communication with railroad dispatch centers, stock exchanges, and telegraph offices across the nation. The terrace gardens cascading down toward the ocean were illuminated by Chinese lanterns. But hidden among the decorative lighting were calcium lights that could instantly illuminate the entire estate grounds if security concerns arose. The true nature of Newport's social structure was revealed by the guest list for that evening. Among the attendees were Senator Marcus Hale of Pennsylvania, who had consistently voted against railroad safety legislation, Judge Cornelius Wetherbe of the Rhode Island Supreme Court, who had dismissed numerous lawsuits against industrial companies, and Dr. Edmund Sheffield, the state medical examiner, whose death certificates had allowed dozens of industrial accidents to be classified as acts of God rather than corporate negligence. Also present were 3 foreign diplomats whose governments had been quietly negotiating trade agreements that would give American corporations preferential access to overseas markets in exchange for substantial private payments to European officials. In a gown of pale blue silk, Evangeline appeared that evening, wearing the famous Cunningham sapphires, a necklace worth more than most people would earn in several lifetimes, but also containing a hidden compartment that held several of her most damaging pieces of evidence against the Newport Compact. Unusually animated, almost excited, she seemed to those who spoke with her later, though several guests noted an underlying tension in her manner that suggested she was preparing for some decisive action. Mrs. Eleanor Sedgwick, wife of a Boston banking magnate who had herself been investigating irregularities in railroad financing, would later tell investigators that Evangeline had pulled her aside during the first waltz, whispering urgently, "Eleanor, if something should happen to me tonight, remember that you saw me speaking with Theodore Peaton near the conservatory. Remember the time. It was precisely 9:15. But more importantly, remember that I gave you this." At that moment, Evangeline had slipped a small key into Mrs. Sedgwick's gloved hand, adding, "Post Office Box 247 in Providence. The combination is my birthday reversed. Whatever you find there, ensure it reaches the Boston Herald and the New York World simultaneously." Theodore Peaton was a 34-year-old heir to a Pittsburgh steel fortune and one of Evangeline's most persistent suitors, but his interest in marriage was motivated by business concerns rather than romantic attraction. Known for his volatile temper and gambling debts exceeding $200,000, Peaton had been pressuring the Cunningham family for months to allow him to court Evangeline formally. What few people realized was that Peaton's debts were owned by the Newport Compact itself, having been purchased from his original creditors as a method of ensuring his cooperation. Several heated conversations between Peaton and Harrison Cunningham were observed by witnesses that evening, though the content remained private. However, positioned where he could overhear portions was James Wetherbe, the judge's son and a junior partner in the Cunningham Railroad business. According to his later testimony, Harrison Cunningham was attempting to convince Pemberton that more direct methods might be necessary to resolve the Evangeline situation, while Peaton expressed concern about the foreign complications such methods might create. The foreign complications referred to Evangeline's extensive correspondence with European journalists and investigators who had been documenting the international scope of American corporate corruption. Through her European education contacts, she had established relationships with reporters from the London Times, the Paris Le Figaro, and the Berlin Tageblatt, all of whom were preparing exposés about American business practices violating international law. Substantial bribes had already been paid by the Newport Compact to suppress some stories, but Evangeline's cooperation was essential to preventing a coordinated international campaign that could result in trade sanctions and diplomatic consequences. With an almost manic energy, Evangeline moved through the crowd as the evening progressed, engaging in unusually long conversations with various guests, many of whom later reported feeling she was somehow testing their knowledge or loyalties. Professor Marcus Aldrich of Yale University, present as a guest of a prominent Newport family, later recalled, "I was surprised when Evangeline approached me with detailed questions about recent archaeological discoveries in Egypt. She seemed particularly interested in methods of preserving documents and artifacts for extended periods. She asked specifically about waterproof containers and whether organic materials could survive being buried in coastal soil conditions for decades or even centuries." Dr. Sheffield, the medical examiner, found himself engaged in what he initially assumed was casual conversation about forensic medicine, but which he later realized had been a sophisticated interrogation about methods of detecting various poisons and drugs in decomposed remains. Knowledge about forensic techniques that far exceeded what any society lady should possess had been demonstrated by Evangeline, who asked specific questions about how long different substances remained detectable in human tissue and whether certain toxins could be confused with natural diseases. At approximately 10:30 p.m., during the height of the evening's festivities, Evangeline excused herself from the ballroom, claiming she needed to retrieve a family heirloom from her private chambers to show to Count von Stephan, who had expressed interest in American railroad history. This was not unusual behavior. The Cunninghams were known for their impromptu displays of their art collection and historical documents. However, that she specifically requested no servants accompany her was unusual, insisting she could manage alone and wanted to select the items personally. What guests did not know was that Evangeline's request to show historical documents to Count von Stephan was actually a coded signal arranged weeks earlier. The Count was not merely a casual visitor, but a representative of European banking interests who had been investigating American railroad financing irregularities at the request of several German investors who suspected they were being defrauded. Evangeline had been secretly providing him with information about the Newport Compact's international operations, and her mention of retrieving documents was his cue to prepare for the final transfer of evidence that would expose the conspiracy to European authorities. The last confirmed sighting of Evangeline Cunningham was by James Wetherbe, who encountered her on the mansion's grand staircase at 10:45 p.m. According to Weatherby's detailed testimony, Evangeline was descending the stairs rapidly, carrying what appeared to be a small leather case or portfolio, but also a larger canvas bag containing bulky items. When he offered to escort her back to the ballroom, she declined, saying, "There are some truths that are more important than social propriety, James. Some secrets that can no longer be kept. Your father will understand soon enough what I mean." Wetherbe later recalled that Evangeline's manner was not fearful, but rather determined and almost exhilarated, as if she was finally taking action on something she had been planning for a long time. She had also made a cryptic comment about insurance policies that have already been activated, adding that certain letters were posted this afternoon that will ensure the truth survives regardless of what happens to me tonight. When Evangeline failed to return to the ballroom after an hour, her mother, Constance Cunningham, sent servants to check her chambers. They found her room empty with clear signs of hasty packing. A window overlooking the ocean was open, and several valuable items were missing, including a significant amount of jewelry and cash. Most mysteriously, Evangeline's private safe had been opened, not forced, but opened with the correct combination, and whatever documents it had contained were gone. However, evidence that suggested the room had been searched by multiple people after Evangeline's departure was also discovered by the servants. Furniture had been moved slightly, hidden compartments had been located and examined, and even the floorboards showed signs of having been pried up and then carefully replaced. This suggested that whatever Evangeline had taken from her safe, other parties had been aware of its existence and had conducted their own search for additional material she might have left behind. The complex web of relationships and rivalries that defined Newport's Gilded Age society was revealed by the immediate response to Evangeline's disappearance. But it also demonstrated the sophisticated methods America's wealthiest families had developed for controlling information and managing potential scandals. Harrison Cunningham's first instinct was to control the narrative, immediately hiring private investigators from the Pinkerton Detective Agency rather than relying solely on local law enforcement. This decision would later prove crucial as it allowed the family to suppress evidence that might have led to a swifter resolution of the case, but it also revealed the extent to which local authorities had already been compromised by corporate influence. Led by Detective Captain William Harrington, the Pinkerton agents began their investigation by examining Evangeline's personal effects and interviewing the mansion staff. A picture of a young woman leading a far more complex and dangerous life than anyone had suspected was painted by what they discovered. Hidden compartments in her writing desk revealed correspondence with lawyers, bankers, federal investigators, and what appeared to be private detectives from as far away as Chicago, San Francisco, and even London and Paris. The letters discussed irregularities in railroad contracts, falsified safety inspections, systematic bribery of federal officials, and, most disturbing of all, coordinated elimination of inconvenient witnesses. Captain Harrington, with 20 years of experience investigating corporate crimes, later wrote in his private notes that Evangeline's documentary collection was the most comprehensive evidence of systematic corruption he had ever encountered. Not just accusations and suspicions, but actual copies of forged documents, photographs of secret meetings, and what appeared to be detailed financial records showing the flow of bribe money through various shell companies and foreign bank accounts were contained in her files. More disturbing were the detailed notes Evangeline had been keeping about the personal lives and business activities of Newport's most prominent families. A private journal written in a cipher that took the Pinkerton agents 3 weeks to decode contained damaging information about extramarital affairs, business frauds, political corruption, and what appeared to be an organized conspiracy among several railroad companies to fix prices, eliminate competition, and suppress safety investigations. One entry, dated just 2 days before her disappearance, read, "The Pinkerton contracts are fraudulent. I now have documentary proof that the steel used in the Baltimore Bridge construction was deliberately substituted with substandard materials to increase profit margins. TP personally approved the substitution, knowing that structural failure was virtually inevitable. The original engineering specifications called for Grade A steel throughout, but the delivered materials were Grade C with falsified certificates. The engineering consultant who discovered the substitution, Robert Henley, died in a hotel fire 3 days after submitting his report. His replacement, Dr. Marcus Webb, was paid $50,000 to certify the substandard materials as acceptable. The Baltimore Bridge, referenced in Evangeline's notes, had collapsed 6 months earlier during the morning rush hour, killing 17 workers and injuring dozens more. The official investigation had concluded the disaster was caused by an unexpected ice storm placing unanticipated stress on the structure, but a far more sinister explanation was suggested by Evangeline's documents. If her allegations were true, Theodore Pinkerton and potentially other members of Newport society were guilty of premeditated murder disguised as corporate negligence. As Captain Harrington's investigation progressed, he began to uncover a pattern of suspicious accidents and mysterious deaths connected to the various business enterprises controlled by Newport's elite families. In the past 5 years alone, at least 18 individuals involved in investigating railroad safety violations, steel quality issues, financial irregularities, or labor organizing had died under circumstances that, while officially ruled accidental, showed troubling similarities when examined collectively. The most disturbing case involved David Cavendish, a federal railway inspector who had been investigating safety violations on the Baltimore and Newport line just 18 months before Evangeline's disappearance. Cavendish had been found dead in his Baltimore hotel room, apparently having suffered a heart attack. However, his widow insisted her husband was in perfect health and had recently passed a comprehensive medical examination. More significantly, she revealed her husband had been receiving threatening letters for weeks and had purchased substantial life insurance after confiding he had discovered evidence of a conspiracy reaching into the highest levels of government and business. Cavendish's investigation files had mysteriously disappeared from their home during the funeral, apparently taken by individuals who gained entry without breaking locks. When she contacted the Cunningham family directly, seeking answers and requesting access to railroad safety records, she received a visit from two well-dressed men identifying themselves as representatives of interests concerned with preventing the spread of malicious rumors. The visitors had not explicitly threatened Mrs. Cavendish, but made it clear her husband's investigation was based on misunderstandings that could result in unfortunate legal consequences if she continued making accusations. They pointed out her husband's federal pension would be jeopardized if his investigation were deemed improper, and her own employment as a school teacher might be affected if reports about her unstable mental state were received by local authorities. Shortly after this visit, Mrs. Cavendish received a substantial anonymous payment with a note suggesting she would be wise to abandon her inquiries and relocate. She complied, moving to Oregon, but not before secretly providing copies of her husband's remaining investigation notes to a journalist friend, Michael O'Connor of the Baltimore Sun. O'Connor began his own investigation into railroad safety violations, but his efforts were systematically obstructed by officials claiming relevant documents had been misfiled or destroyed. When he attempted to interview other federal inspectors, he discovered several had been transferred to remote locations or promoted to positions without access to operational safety data. O'Connor's investigation revealed the pattern of inspector deaths extended beyond the Cavendish case. In the past 3 years, 7 federal inspectors working on railroad safety issues had died in circumstances that, while individually plausible, formed a statistically impossible pattern together: 3 heart attacks with no prior cardiac problems, 2 hotel fires destroying investigation files, 1 drowning suggesting he had been drugged, and 1 killed in an apparent random robbery just days before scheduled congressional testimony. The most chilling discovery in Evangeline's files was a document appearing to be a price list for various services provided by what was termed the Newport Adjustment Bureau. The document, written in code but with a key Evangeline had apparently broken, listed fees for permanent solutions to persistent problems, accidental resolution of inconvenient situations, and comprehensive reputation management services. Prices ranged from $5,000 for simple intimidation to $50,000 for permanent elimination with complete documentary cleanup. Captain Harrington's investigation of this document led him to discover the Newport Adjustment Bureau was apparently a real organization operating out of offices in New York, Chicago, and San Francisco, providing a discreet consulting services for industrial concerns. However, when Harrington attempted to investigate directly, he found its offices closed, staff disappeared, and business records removed from all official repositories. 3 weeks after Evangeline's disappearance, a discovery that would fundamentally alter the investigation and reveal the true scope of the conspiracy was made by Captain Harrington. While examining the grounds of Windward Hall with greater scrutiny, using military tracking techniques, he noticed soil in a particular section of the garden showed signs of recent disturbance. The area was near the mansion's conservatory, close to where Evangeline had reportedly been seen speaking with Theodore Peaton, but also observable from several mansion windows. Using specialized excavation techniques just beginning to be employed in criminal investigations, Harrington and his team carefully excavated the site. What they found was not Evangeline's body, but something equally significant and far more dangerous: a waterproof metal container buried approximately 4 feet underground, wrapped in oiled canvas and sealed with wax. Inside were copies of the documents that had disappeared from Evangeline's safe, along with additional materials painting an even more damning picture of corruption among Newport's elite families and revealing the international scope of their criminal activities. The buried archive contained detailed financial records showing systematic embezzlement from the Baltimore and Newport Railroad's worker pension fund, forged safety inspection certificates for at least 12 major construction projects across the Northeast, evidence of bribery involving federal officials, judges, and local politicians, and, most shocking of all, detailed correspondence with European criminal organizations specializing in what the documents euphemistically termed industrial problem resolution. According to Evangeline's documentation, what she had labeled the Newport Compact was not merely a business conspiracy, but an American branch of an international network of wealthy families coordinating activities across national borders since the 1870s. The compact included the Cunninghams, the Pembertons, and 5 other American families, but also maintained formal relationships with similar organizations in England, Germany, France, and Russia. These international connections allowed them to launder money, hide assets, eliminate inconvenient individuals in multiple countries, and manipulate commodity markets globally. The most detailed document was a comprehensive organizational chart revealing the full structure of the Newport Compact's operations. At the top were the 7 American families, each controlling specific industrial sectors: railroads, steel production, coal mining, shipping, banking, textiles, and agricultural commodities. Below them were dozens of subsidiary organizations, private detective agencies, legal firms, medical practices, newspaper companies, and what appeared to be several funeral establishments specializing in discreet body disposal. One particularly disturbing section documented what Evangeline had termed the American Death List, a comprehensive record of individuals eliminated by the Newport Compact since its formation in 1877. The list included federal investigators, journalists, labor organizers, business competitors, and even family members who had threatened to expose the organization's activities. Each entry included the person's name, occupation, specific threat posed, method of elimination, and cost. The death list revealed the Newport Compact had been responsible for at least 43 murders over 16 years using methods ranging from poisoning and staged accidents to hired assassinations disguised as random crimes. Among the most shocking entries was the death of Congressman William Hayes of Ohio, leading a congressional investigation into railroad safety violations. Hayes had died in 1891 of what was officially ruled a heart attack, but the archive revealed he had been poisoned with a substance mimicking cardiac failure during a dinner at the Union Club in Washington attended by several Newport Compact members. Another entry documented the elimination of Sarah Mitchell, a Chicago Tribune journalist investigating connections between industrial accidents and political corruption. Mitchell had died in a hotel fire, destroying her life and investigation files. The archive revealed the fire had been deliberately set using a new accelerant, leaving no trace of arson, and that Mitchell had been drugged beforehand to ensure she could not escape. Perhaps the most chilling discovery was a document appearing to be Evangeline's own death warrant, written in the hand of Judge Cornelius Wetherbe and countersigned by Theodore Peaton and Harrison Cunningham himself. Dated 3 days before the summer's end ball, it read, "The EC situation has become untenable. Foreign complications require immediate resolution. Recommend permanent solution with careful attention to documentary cleanup. Suggest maritime disposal to prevent forensic complications. Authorization granted for expenditure up to $75,000 for comprehensive resolution." Attached was a detailed plan for Evangeline's murder, a drug causing apparent heart failure, disposal by weighting and dropping into deep ocean water from a private yacht, and a cover story that she had fled with a secret lover to Europe but subsequently died in a tragic accident abroad. The plan also included provisions for eliminating witnesses, with Margaret Flynn and Patrick O'Brien specifically identified as individuals needing management to prevent inconvenient testimony. An immediate crisis for his investigation was created by Captain Harrington's discovery of this archive. On one hand, he now possessed comprehensive evidence of a criminal conspiracy reaching into the highest levels of American business and government. On the other, he realized his own life was now in danger, as the archive made clear the Newport Compact had extensive resources for eliminating threats and had already demonstrated willingness to kill federal investigators. Harrington's concerns proved well-founded. Within days, pressure from unexpected sources began. His Pinkerton superior suggested he was pursuing unproductive lines and recommended focusing on the theory Evangeline had simply fled with a secret lover. When Harrington refused, pointing to the clear evidence of a murder conspiracy, he was informed the Cunningham family had complained about his harassment and requested his removal. More ominously, Harrington began receiving subtle but unmistakable threats. His hotel room was searched, his investigation notes examined. Anonymous letters suggested his wife and children in Chicago might be safer if he concluded his investigation quickly. Most disturbing, someone had been making inquiries about his personal finances, family background, and potential vulnerabilities. Recognizing his position had become untenable, Harrington made a decision that probably saved his life but ensured the truth would remain hidden for decades. He secretly made multiple copies of the most important documents, hiding them in various locations and arranging for delivery to trusted associates if anything happened to him. He then officially concluded his investigation with a report largely supporting the theory Evangeline had fled voluntarily, while privately continuing to investigate through unofficial channels. As Captain Harrington delved deeper into the Newport Compact unofficially, he began to understand Evangeline's disappearance was not an isolated incident, but the culmination of a systematic campaign to eliminate the most serious threat the organization had ever faced. What made Evangeline particularly dangerous was not just her access to inside information, but her sophisticated understanding of how to gather evidence, preserve it securely, and coordinate with multiple investigators and journalists to ensure revelations could not be suppressed. Harrington's continued investigation revealed Evangeline had been working for at least 18 months with a network of individuals sharing her commitment to exposing the Newport Compact's activities. This network included federal investigators secretly documenting corruption, foreign journalists investigating from outside domestic intimidation, and even several wealthy individuals who had broken with their own families' participation. The most significant network member was Dr. Helena Ashford, a physician and social reformer investigating the connection between industrial accidents and inadequate medical care for workers. Dr. Ashford had initially become involved noticing workers injured in railroad accidents were often treated by specific doctors more concerned with minimizing legal liability than providing appropriate care. Her investigation revealed several medical practitioners were paid substantial fees for false diagnoses, preventing injured workers from successfully suing railroad companies. Dr. Ashford had also discovered certain hospitals routinely disposing of workers' bodies without proper examination when they died from industrial injuries, often claiming families had requested immediate burial for religious reasons. In reality, these bodies were being destroyed to prevent independent medical examiners from discovering evidence of criminal negligence or deliberate poisoning. Dr. Ashford's investigation documented at least 37 cases where workers had been buried without proper medical examination despite clear evidence their deaths were suspicious. When Dr. Ashford attempted to present her findings, she encountered the same pattern of obstruction and intimidation, medical boards claiming evidence insufficient, government officials insisting regulations adequate, and hospitals suddenly declaring records destroyed. More seriously, she began receiving threats becoming increasingly specific and personal. Anonymous letters warned lady doctors who interfere in matters beyond their understanding might find medical licenses revoked, reputations destroyed, or personal safety compromised. When threats failed, rumors were spread about her professional competence and personal morality. Dr. Ashford's connection to Evangeline began when the young heiress approached her with questions about detecting poisons. Evangeline presented herself as a wealthy dilettante with an interest in forensic medicine, but Dr. Ashford quickly realized her visitor possessed sophisticated criminal investigation knowledge and sought information for specific purposes. Over several months, the two women developed a collaborative relationship, Dr. Ashford providing medical expertise while Evangeline contributed financial resources and business information access. Their partnership proved remarkably effective, allowing documentation of the Newport Compact's full scope with detail and scientific rigor individual investigators could never achieve. Dr. Ashford's medical knowledge enabled identifying patterns of suspicious deaths, while Evangeline's business connections allowed tracing financial relationships and documenting bribe money flow. However, their collaboration also made both women extremely dangerous, leading to increasingly sophisticated efforts to neutralize their investigation. Dr. Ashford discovered medical colleagues' pressure to avoid her, patients warned she was mentally unstable, and hospitals told employing her might result in lost funding. More ominously, incidents suggesting personal safety under threat began, her home burglarized twice with no valuables stolen but medical records examined, anonymous letters containing detailed daily routine information, and discovered tampering with medical supplies, substituting dangerous substances for legitimate medications. As pressure intensified, increasingly sophisticated methods of protecting their investigation were developed. Evangeline established the network of safety deposit boxes and foreign contacts, while Dr. Ashford created her own system of hidden archives and automatic disclosure procedures. However, their most important innovation was developing what they termed the insurance policy, a comprehensive document detailing criminal activities and providing evidence of suppression efforts and witness elimination. This document was designed so damaging its release would inevitably result in federal investigations, international diplomatic consequences, and criminal prosecutions that could not be suppressed. It contained not only documentation of past crimes, but evidence of ongoing activities and detailed predictions about future crimes. This predictive element was crucial because if eliminated, subsequent fulfillment of predictions would provide compelling evidence other allegations were accurate. On the evening of the summer's end ball, Evangeline carried a copy of the insurance policy in the leather case observed by James Wetherb. Her plan was to present this document to assembled Newport Compact members, demanding they confess crimes and make restitution. If refused, she would activate automatic disclosure procedures, simultaneously releasing the document to multiple newspapers, federal prosecutors, and foreign governments. What Evangeline had not anticipated was the Newport Compact's own intelligence network monitoring her activities and discovering some preparations. While not knowing the full extent of her evidence or disclosure details, they learned enough to realize she represented an existential threat. This intelligence led to the decision documented in Judge Weatherby's authorization to eliminate her permanently. The confrontation in Evangeline's chambers was not spontaneous, but a carefully planned operation involving not only Theodore Peaton and Judge Wetherb, but several other members positioned strategically throughout the mansion to ensure completion without interference. However, before this confrontation, Harrington's investigation revealed Evangeline managed one final act of defiance, ensuring posthumous victory. During the evening, she succeeded activating some disclosure procedures, sending coded telegrams to her network and setting in motion the chain of events eventually exposing the organization's crimes. Just when we thought we'd seen it all, the horror in Newport intensifies. If this story gives you chills, share this video with a friend who loves dark mysteries. Hit that like button to support our content, and don't forget to subscribe to never miss stories like this. Let's discover together what happens next in this tale of Gilded Age corruption and murder. The truth about Evangeline Cunningham's final hours began emerging through an extraordinary evidence convergence Captain Harrington would not fully piece together until months after the official investigation closed. The breakthrough came when Margaret Flynn, Evangeline's personal maid, found courage providing a complete account of what she witnessed August 14, 1893. Flynn's testimony, corroborated by physical evidence and documentary materials Evangeline preserved, revealed a confrontation of stunning brutality demonstrating the length America's wealthiest families would go to protect their criminal empire. According to Flynn's detailed account, the confrontation indeed occurred, but not as a spontaneous argument escalating beyond control. It was a carefully orchestrated operation involving extensive preparation and participation of individuals clearly planning and rehearsing roles. Flynn reported observing unusual activity throughout the evening, with several guests making multiple trips to a temporary command center established in Harrison Cunningham's private study. At approximately 11:15 p.m., not 11:30 as initially reported, Flynn heard voices in Evangeline's chambers. However, rather than listening through the keyhole, she utilized servant passages allowing observation from a concealed position providing clear view of most room. Not a heated argument, but a methodical interrogation designed to extract information about Evangeline's evidence and disclosure procedures was witnessed. Participants included not only Theodore Peaton, Judge Wetherb, and Harrison Cunningham, but also Dr. Edmund Sheffield and two unrecognized men appearing to be professional criminals rather than Newport Society members. These men were clearly there providing specialized expertise in what Flynn euphemistically described as the physical persuasion techniques. The interrogation began with Judge Wetherb presenting Evangeline a legal document requiring surrender of all evidence and submission to psychiatric evaluation for delusions and paranoid fantasies. When Evangeline refused signing, Dr. Sheffield produced a medical bag containing therapeutic treatments that will help clarify your thinking about these unfortunate misunderstandings. Evangeline's response demonstrated courage and sophisticated understanding of legal and medical systems used against her. She informed captors she consulted legal experts about coercive tactics and understood confessions or evidence surrenders obtained through force or medical coercion would be inadmissible. More importantly, she revealed anticipating this confrontation and already activating legal and journalistic procedures ensuring truth emergence regardless what happened. At this point, Flynn's testimony indicates the confrontation tone changed dramatically. Judge Wetherb abandoned legal procedure pretense, describing graphically what would happen if Evangeline did not cooperate voluntarily. He explained sophisticated elimination methods leaving no foul play trace, successfully used against dozens threatening their interests. Theodore Peaton supplemented threats with detailed descriptions of specific individuals previously attempting exposure. He described Congressman Hayes's death in Washington, journalist Sarah Mitchell's elimination in Chicago, and several other cases Flynn recognized from newspapers. Peyton's intimate knowledge made clear personal involvement planning and executing murders. However, Evangeline's response surprised interrogators, demonstrating understanding far more about their organization than realized. She informed them months spent documenting involvement-specific cases, already providing detailed evidence each murder to investigators and journalists. She also revealed evidence international connections, including correspondence European criminal organizations and documentation murders committed foreign countries. Most significantly, Evangeline revealed evidence involvement the Philadelphia incident, a train derailment killing over 40 passengers officially attributed mechanical failure. According evidence, derailment deliberately caused eliminating European investors investigating American railroad financing irregularities. Investors traveling together specific train made ideal target appearing tragic accident. Revelation created what Flynn described moment absolute silence as interrogators realized Evangeline possessed evidence most carefully concealed crime. This incident involved multiple murders and destruction evidence belonging foreign governments, creating potential international diplomatic crises and criminal prosecutions uncontrollable domestic corruption. At this point, Dr. Sheffield produced a syringe containing preparation providing immediate relief these unfortunate delusions. However, Evangeline anticipated possibility, preparing consuming substance counteracting most common poisons and drugs. Various items usable weapons physical force necessary positioned room. The final phase began Evangeline attempting reach window leading emergency escape route. This route prepared months earlier, installing rope ladder allowing descent boat hidden rocks below mansion. However, professional criminals anticipated possibility, positioning prevent escape. According Flynn's testimony, brief violent struggle followed Evangeline fighting attackers long enough throwing leather case containing most important evidence window, hoping carried sea or recovered allies monitoring situation boats offshore. However, overwhelmed superior numbers, injected Dr. Sheffield's preparation. The drug not kill immediately, induced paralysis leaving conscious but unable move speak. Condition force listen captors discussing specific methods disposing body eliminating evidence involvement. Judge Weatherb explained waiting drug fully take effect, transporting body boat waiting secluded Cove Miles mansion. Boat carry body far sea, weighted drop deep water preventing recovery. Personal effects distributed various locations creating impression fled voluntarily, forged documents created supporting cover story died tragic accident Europe eloping secret lover. However, lying paralyzed helpless, one final victory murderers achieved Evangeline. Flynn observed wearing special ring containing hidden compartment, somehow activating mechanism releasing small amount chemical powder air. Powder designed react specific substances creating distinctive odor detectable several days despite cleaning attempts. More importantly, Flynn realized powder formulated adhere clothing skin, meaning anyone present during release carry traces chemical weeks afterward, providing evidence potentially identifying murderers investigators sophisticated enough detect analyze chemical traces. Flynn's final observation perhaps most significant understanding Newport compact's criminal enterprise full scope. As drug effects began overwhelming Evangeline, Judge Weatherb made telephone call private line room. Flynn heard one-side conversation, clear judge reporting operation success someone not present mansion. Conversation included references Chicago situation London complications, suggesting Newport compact simultaneously conducting similar operations multiple locations. Flynn heard judge say, primary asset secured documentation issue contained. Recommend proceeding phase 2 containment protocol. International complications resolved within 72 hours. This conversation confirmed Evangeline's murder part larger operation eliminating multiple threats simultaneously. Organization apparently identified several individuals different locations possessing dangerous evidence, coordinated elimination preventing surviving witnesses piecing together full-scope crimes. The ultimate resolution Evangeline Cunningham case revealed extraordinary sophistication Newport compacts criminal operations remarkable effectiveness countermeasures Evangeline developed ensuring evidence survive murder. While killers succeeded eliminating physically, failed preventing disclosure evidence, resulting consequences ultimately destroying organization, allowing most individual participants escape legal punishment. The first breakthrough exposing Newport compact came exactly 10 days Evangeline's disappearance journalists New York World, Boston Herald, Philadelphia Inquirer simultaneously received packages containing comprehensive documentation organization's criminal activities. Packages mailed multiple post offices across New England system Evangeline developed, ensuring even deliveries intercepted, enough evidence reach intended recipients guarantee exposure. Packages contained copies Newport Compact's internal documents detailed analyses Evangeline prepared help Dr. Ashford collaborators. Analyses demonstrated connections apparently unrelated deaths, explained methods corrupting government officials medical examiners, provided comprehensive organizational chart revealing full-scope conspiracy. Most significantly, packages included prediction-specific actions Newport Compact take response Evangeline's disappearance. Predictions proved remarkably accurate. Organization's efforts suppress investigation eliminate witnesses followed patterns Evangeline anticipated studying previous operations. Fulfilled precise accuracy provided compelling evidence Evangeline's other allegations equally reliable. Newspaper investigations followed generated enormous public outrage political pressure extensive corruption network completely suppress. Federal prosecutors forced open investigations, congressional committees demanded hearings, international diplomatic pressure mounted European governments realized citizens murdered American business interests. However, legal consequences individual members surprisingly limited, demonstrating extent wealth political influence shield criminals prosecution even crimes extensively documented publicly revealed. Harrison Cunningham died officially reported heart attack 2 weeks first newspaper stories appeared, though rapid onset symptoms circumstances death consistent poisoning. Death eliminated prosecutors' most important potential witness, making difficult pursuing charges other organization members. Theodore Peton fled Argentina days federal marshals arrived arrest, using financial resources transportation networks established exactly emergencies. Lived assumed name remote estate death 1923, never returning United States, continuing coordinate organization members encrypted correspondence financial transfers. Judge Weatherb quietly removed bench retired private estate California, officially health concerns, actually part negotiated agreement allowing avoid prosecution exchange providing limited information judicial corruption activities. Information carefully selected protecting most important participants sacrificing lower-level associates become liabilities. Dr. Sheffield committed suicide facing prosecution, destroying extensive records providing evidence involvement covering numerous murders. Death itself suspicious, found office gunshot wound either self-inflicted administered someone preventing revealing information other organization members. Of 7 families identified Newport Compact members, only 2 face serious legal consequences, even limited financial penalties social ostracism criminal prosecution. 3 family patriarchs died suspicious circumstances months revelations, apparently victims elimination methods used enemies. Remaining families used wealth political connections avoid prosecution, though reputations permanently damage business operations severely disrupted. Most tragic aspect case systematic elimination witnesses potential informants followed public revelations. Margaret Flynn, testimony crucial understanding Evangeline's fate, disappeared shortly giving statement investigators. Reportedly seen boarding train Chicago, carrying suitcase substantial cash, no further trace found despite extensive searches law enforcement private investigators. Patrick O'Brien, night watchman observations corroborated Flynn's testimony, died ruled accidental drowning 3 months investigation concluded. However, circumstances death, found Mill Pond despite experience swimmer no reason location, suggested murdered preventing additional testimony. Dr. Helena Ashford, Evangeline's primary collaborator documenting activities, survived longer most witnesses, ultimately eliminated manner demonstrating organization's sophisticated methods. Died appearing laboratory accident, overcome chemical fumes conducting research. However, accident investigation revealed laboratory ventilation system deliberately sabotaged requiring extensive technical knowledge careful planning. Witness elimination continued several years initial revelations, creating pattern deaths clearly deliberate sufficiently spread time geography avoid attracting attention law enforcement agencies specifically looking connections. Total, least 15 individuals provided evidence assistance related investigation died suspicious circumstances 1893 to 1897. However, most significant long-term consequence case gradual transformation investigative journalism federal law enforcement resulting techniques Evangeline pioneered. Methods gathering evidence, preserving securely, coordinating multiple investigators journalists became standard practices reporters investigating powerful interests. Several prominent journalists early 20th century cited Newport compact expose inspiration entering field, credited Evangeline's techniques making investigations possible. Federal government began developing sophisticated methods investigating corporate crimes political corruption, partly response evidence Newport compact operated 15 years detection despite dozens murders stealing millions dollars. New agencies created specialized expertise financial crimes, interstate criminal conspiracies, corruption government officials. Perhaps importantly, international diplomatic consequences case-led development treaties agreements preventing American businesses committing crimes foreign citizens impunity. Several countries established special investigative units monitoring American business activities borders, international cooperation criminal investigations significantly enhanced. Cunningham fortune eventually inherited distant relatives connection railroad business knowledge Newport compact activities. Relatives sold families business interests used proceeds established charitable foundations focused worker safety industrial accident prevention, fitting memorial 17 workers died Baltimore bridge collapse dozens victims corporate negligence. Windward Hall, mansion Evangeline murdered, sold converted luxury hotel, though business struggled persistent reports unexplained phenomena rooms once private chambers. Guests reported hearing voices walls, finding documents disappear examined closely, experiencing dreams containing detailed information historical events way knowing. Mansion eventually demolished 1932 suspicious fire destroying building, including room Evangeline died. The leather case Evangeline thrown window final struggle never officially recovered despite extensive searches coastline ocean floor. However, persistent rumors actually found local fishermen recognizing important secretly turned federal investigators. According rumors, case contained evidence even extensive corruption, possibly involving federal politicians, Supreme Court justices, international business conspiracies extending far Newport compacts American operations. Some historians believe additional evidence suppressed federal authorities concluded revelation caused extensive political economic disruption threatening American government stability itself. According theory, government officials made calculated decision prosecuting lower-level participants protecting higher-level figures exposure create unmanageable political crisis. Most persistent mystery concerns ultimate fate Evangeline termed insurance policy, comprehensive document detailing past crimes predicting future activities. While portions clearly included materials reached newspapers prosecutors, indications additional sections existed never publicly revealed. Contemporary observers noted specific predictions included revealed portions fulfilled remarkable precision years following death, other predictions referenced private correspondence never publicly disclosed. Suggests portions document may suppressed authorities recognizing revelation consequences extending far prosecution members. Ultimately, Evangeline Cunningham's story serves inspiration warning possibilities limitations individual courage confronting systematic corruption. Sophisticated understanding criminal investigation techniques, ability build networks allies collaborators, careful preparation evidence preservation disclosure procedures enabled posthumous victory murderers impossible less prepared resourceful individual. However, story demonstrates brutal effectiveness organized wealth power protecting violence intimidation. Even evidence ultimately exposed activities-led organization destruction, most individual participants escaped serious punishment continued comfortable lives supported wealth accumulated murder theft. Perhaps important lesson case struggle justice corruption single battle won lost definitively, ongoing conflict requiring constant vigilance courage individuals willing risk personal safety greater good. Evangeline's sacrifice contributed improvements worker safety, government accountability, journalistic independence benefiting millions people. But fundamental systems enabling operate, concentration wealth power small elite, remained largely unchanged. This mystery shows even face overwhelming corruption violence, individual conscience courage make difference. Truth way surviving powerful forces attempt bury layers money, influence, intimidation. Evangeline Cunningham's evidence survived murder ultimately achieved justice sought, though cost demonstrating true price challenging entrenched power. What think story? Believe everything revealed? Might secrets still hidden archives America's wealthiest families? Techniques Evangeline developed investigating corporate crimes still use journalists' law enforcement agencies today, suggesting legacy continues threaten those use wealth power exploit harm others. Leave comment below think really happened missing leather case whether similar conspiracies might operating today. Enjoyed tale want historical mysteries like this? Subscribe, hit notification bell, share someone loves dark stories America's past. See next video.